Dr. HFY had seen approximately 14,000 patients over their 3-decade career aboard the Mercy's Reach, and they prided themselves on never once losing their composure. Not when a Krolorian ambassador's third heart decided to take an unscheduled vacation from beating. Not when a Pelian child somehow managed to crystallize their own bloodstream. And certainly not when that Zephyrite traitor came in with a parasite that, technically speaking, had achieved sentience and wanted to negotiate its own medical treatment. HFY was, in a word, unflappable. Their 4 slender arms moved with practiced precision across the holographic displays in the emergency bay, each gesture pulling up vital readouts and trauma protocols. The chitinous plates along their elongated skull gleamed under the sterile lighting as they reviewed the incoming distress call. A human freight vessel. Collision with spatial debris. Multiple casualties expected, humans. HFY's secondary eyelids flickered in what might have been the Vrexian equivalent of a suppressed sigh. Fragile little things, humans. Decent enough engineers, sure, and their food was surprisingly not terrible, but medically speaking they were held together with optimism and prayer to whatever primitive deities they still pretended to believe in. No redundant organs. No regenerative capabilities. Their skin tore if you looked at it wrong, and do not even get HFY started on their singular cardiovascular system. 1 heart. 1. What kind of evolutionary oversight was that? Incoming transport, docking bay 7. ETA 90 seconds, announced Nurse Kivri, her crystalline voice chiming through the comm system. Prep 3 trauma beds. Standard fragile species protocol, HFY called out, already mentally cataloging the likely injuries. Blunt force trauma. Possible decompression damage. Probably some broken bones. The poor things broke bones like it was a recreational activity. And someone get the bone knitting station ready. Humans always need the bone knitting station. The emergency bay doors hissed open with a rush of recycled air. The medical team moved into position, a well-rehearsed dance of preparation. HFY stood at the center, all 4 arms poised, their medical scanner already humming to life in their primary right hand. What shambled through those doors made HFY's confidence stumble for the first time in 27 years. The human was walking. Not being carried on a gurney. Not floating in a stasis field. Walking. On his own 2 legs. Which, according to the preliminary scan data now flooding HFY's display, should not have been attached to his body in any functional capacity. "Hey, Doc," the human said, his voice remarkably steady for someone whose bio-reading suggested he was approximately 60% corpse. He had brown hair matted with something that was definitely blood, a smile that seemed wildly inappropriate given the circumstances, and eyes that held the kind of casual disregard for mortality that HFY had only seen in terminal patients who had made peace with their fate. "Sorry about the mess. I know you guys probably have better things to do than scrape me off the ceiling of my ship." Again. Again, HFY's scanner was screaming. Not literally, of course, medical equipment did not scream, but the cascade of red alert symbols flooding the display might as well have been shrieking into the void. Punctured lung. Fractured ribs. 3 of them. No, wait, 4. The scan was still updating. 5. Internal bleeding in multiple cavities. Severe concussion. Probable spinal trauma. Nurse Kivri, get this human on a bed immediately. We need emergency intervention, full trauma response, and someone contact the surgical bay that we will need. I am really okay, Doc, the human, Marcus Webb according to his ship's manifest, interrupted. He was now leaning against a medical cart like they were at a social gathering. Just need maybe some bandages and one of those ice pack things. Do you guys have ice here? I can never remember which species do the ice thing and which ones think frozen water is some kind of weird human fetish. HFY stared. Their medical training covered 1,700 known species across 42 star systems. Nowhere in that extensive education had anyone prepared them for a patient who was, by all measurable standards, dead, asking about ice with the casual tone of someone ordering a beverage. "Mr. Webb," HFY said slowly, with the careful patience of someone explaining orbital mechanics to a child, "according to my scanner, you should not be conscious right now. In fact, you should not be alive right now. You should be very, extremely, exceptionally dead." Marcus Webb looked down at himself, then back up at HFY. His smile widened. "Yeah," he said. "I get that a lot. It is very funny, isn't it?" Funny was not the word HFY would have chosen. Terrifying. Medically impossible. A fundamental violation of everything they understood about biology. But not funny. This was going to be a very long shift. HFY pulled up the full diagnostic scan and immediately wished they had not. The holographic display rotated a three-dimensional rendering of Marcus Webb's internal systems, and it looked less like a functional organism and more like a very enthusiastic demonstration of what happens when physics gets angry at biology. The left lung had a tear approximately 4 centimeters long. Air was leaking into the pleural cavity. Ribs 3 through 7 on the right side showed fracture lines, with rib 5 being what medical texts politely called displaced and what HFY personally thought of as enthusiastically trying to become an external rib. The liver showed signs of blunt force trauma with active hemorrhaging. The spleen, an organ HFY had always considered humanity's backup confusion organ since it seemed to do very little except occasionally rupture, was doing exactly that. Rupturing, and the human was sitting up, not lying down in shock. Not unconscious. Sitting up on the exam table with his legs dangling over the side like a child waiting for a treat. "So, do you guys have coffee on this ship?" Marcus asked, scratching at a cut on his forehead that was actively bleeding. "I am not trying to be demanding or anything, but I have been up for like 36 hours and the crash really has not helped with the whole alertness situation. You want coffee?" HFY's voice came out flat, all 4 arms hanging motionless at their sides. "I mean, if it is not too much trouble. You want coffee. Preferably black, but I will take whatever you have got." Nurse Kivri drifted closer, her semi-translucent Pelian form shimmering with what HFY recognized as deep confusion. The Pelians were a delicate species, crystalline and beautiful, who could be critically injured by loud noises. She spoke in a whisper that somehow still carried across the room. "Doctor, I am reading the same data you are. This should not be possible. His pain receptors alone should have triggered neurogenic shock. The blood loss should have rendered him unconscious. The lung collapse should have made coherent speech impossible." "I can hear you guys," Marcus said cheerfully. "And yeah, no, I am definitely in a lot of pain. Like a solid 7 out of 10. Maybe 7.5. Had an 8 once when I got kicked by a Terran cargo mule, and this is not quite that bad, so I am thinking 7.5 is fair." HFY's primary eyes focused on the human while their secondary eyes continued scanning the medical readouts, a trick that usually made patients uncomfortable. Marcus did not seem to notice or care. "Mr. Webb, you are not understanding the severity of your condition. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being perfect health and 10 being deceased, you are approximately an 11. You should be unconscious. You should be in surgery. You should be, and I cannot stress this enough, not asking me for beverages." "Okay, but counterpoint," Marcus said, holding up one finger like he was about to deliver a brilliant philosophical argument. "I am conscious, I am not in surgery, and I really, really want that coffee. Your left lung has collapsed. Still got the right one. That is what backups are for. Humans do not have backup lungs. You have 2 lungs that both need to function. I mean, I am breathing right now, so clearly one of them is pulling overtime. Good lung. Hard worker. Definitely deserves that coffee." Kivri's glow flickered rapidly, a sign of Pelian distress. "Doctor, should I prepare the surgical suite? The internal bleeding alone requires immediate intervention. Please do, HFY said, not taking their eyes off Marcus. Mr. Webb, you will need surgery within the next 20 minutes or you will die. Okay, but have you considered that I might not die? Marcus offered this with the tone of someone suggesting a restaurant for dinner. Because, and I am just spitballing here, I have had worse Tuesdays and I am still around. Worse Tuesdays. Yeah, you know. Tuesdays. Worst day of the week. Everyone knows this. I do not care about your opinion on weekdays. I care that you are actively dying and you are treating this like a minor inconvenience. Marcus shrugged, then immediately winced. Okay, should not have done that. The ribs did not like that. He prodded gently at his side, which made Kivri make a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Look, Doc, I appreciate the concern, I really do. But humans are kind of built different. We are like the cockroaches of space. Hard to kill. Harder to keep down. And really, really annoying when you are trying to have a clean medical facility. HFY wondered if this was what going insane felt like. They had always imagined it would be more dramatic. Perhaps some screaming. Maybe throwing medical equipment. Instead, it just felt like their entire understanding of biology was quietly folding itself into a tiny square and tucking itself away in embarrassment. Nurse Kivri, HFY said with the measured calm of someone who had transcended panic and arrived at a zen-like state of bewildered acceptance, forget the coffee. Get me this human's complete medical history. I need to understand what kind of nightmare evolution created. The medical file took approximately 45 seconds to download from the Terran medical database, and HFY spent every one of those seconds hoping that perhaps the file would be corrupted. Or empty. Or possibly just a single line reading, pretty healthy, no problems here, followed by 17 exclamation points. Instead, what materialized across their display was what could only be described as a horror novel disguised as a medical record. HFY scrolled. And scrolled. And kept scrolling. The file was 87 pages long. Marcus Webb was 32 years old. That averaged out to roughly 2.7 pages of medical disasters per year of existence, and HFY was not even accounting for childhood, which surely must have been less eventful. They were wrong about childhood. Age 7, HFY read aloud, their voice taking on the hollow quality of someone reading their own autopsy report. Fell from a tree. Broke left arm. Compound fracture. Treatment, cast and observation. Age 8, fell from a different tree. Broke right arm. I was not good at learning lessons as a kid, Marcus offered helpfully. Age 9, broke both arms falling off a roof. Okay, but in fairness, I was told the roof could hold me. By whom? A structural engineer? By my brother. Who was 11. In retrospect, not the best source. HFY continued reading, their horror mounting with each entry. Age 12, severe concussion from sports activity called baseball, which apparently involved people throwing hard objects at each other for recreation. Age 14, appendicitis requiring emergency surgery. Wait, HFY stopped. Your appendix. The useless organ that serves no function. It became inflamed and tried to kill you. Oh yeah, that was a fun Tuesday. Marcus grinned. Well, Wednesday actually. See, told you Tuesdays are worse. Your own body. Attacked itself. For no reason. That is kind of the appendix's whole deal, Marcus said, as if this was a completely reasonable biological feature. It just sits there doing nothing, and then one day it wakes up and chooses violence. Very on brand for human anatomy, honestly. Nurse Kivri's glow had shifted to a pale blue, which in Pelian color language meant something between deep confusion and existential dread. Doctor, if I may, the Pelian body has redundant systems specifically designed to prevent internal conflict. The concept of an organ attacking its host is horrifying, Marcus suggested. Because yeah, it was not great. But they removed it and I was fine. Well, after the infection cleared up. There was an infection? HFY was no longer reading, just staring at Marcus like he was a puzzle that had personally offended them. Post-surgical complication. Happens sometimes. HFY forced themselves to continue reading. Age 16, food poisoning from something called gas station sushi. Age 17, broken nose, broken jaw, 3 cracked teeth from another sports activity. Age 19, snake bite. Venomous. Species, Terran rattlesnake. You were bitten by a venomous creature and survived? I mean, they gave me anti-venom. That is kind of cheating though. Cheating. You consider medical intervention for lethal poisoning to be cheating. Well, it is not like I fought off the venom with pure determination. Though I did throw up for like 6 hours, so maybe my stomach was doing some fighting. The list continued. Age 21, alcohol poisoning. Age 23, fell off a cliff while hiking, multiple fractures and internal injuries. Age 25, severe burns from a shuttle engine malfunction. Age 27, exposed to vacuum for approximately 45 seconds during a hull breach. HFY stopped scrolling. Their entire body had gone very, very still. You were exposed to the vacuum of space. Only for like 45 seconds. The safety systems kicked in pretty fast. 45 seconds is approximately 44 seconds longer than most species can survive vacuum exposure. Yeah, but I held my breath. Well, actually, you are supposed to exhale, but I panicked and held my breath, which was the wrong thing to do, and I got the bends pretty bad, but they put me in a pressure chamber and I was mostly fine after a week. Mostly fine. I mean, my hearing was weird for a month, but it came back. HFY set down their data pad. All 4 arms hung limply at their sides. Their entire worldview, carefully constructed over decades of medical training and practice, was crumbling like a sandcastle in a tsunami. Mr. Webb, they said slowly, how are you alive? Marcus considered this with the thoughtful expression of someone pondering what to have for lunch. Spite, mostly. And modern medicine. But like, 70% spite. This is not medically possible. And yet. Marcus gestured at himself with both hands, wincing again at the rib movement. Here I am. Still kicking. Well, not kicking right now because that would probably hurt, but you get the idea. Kivri drifted closer to HFY, her voice barely a whisper. Doctor, I think we need to reconsider our entire understanding of human resilience. HFY could not argue with that. They looked at Marcus Webb, sitting on the exam table, actively bleeding from multiple internal injuries, asking about coffee, and having survived more catastrophic events than most species encountered in 10 lifetimes. Humans, HFY decided, were not fragile, they were terrifying. HFY decided to approach this logically. They were a medical professional. They had protocols. They had procedures. They had 3 decades of experience. Surely, treating one catastrophically injured human could not be that difficult. They were wrong in ways they had not yet begun to comprehend. We will start with a standard panspecies analgesic, HFY announced, loading a hypospray with a medication that worked on approximately 94% of known species. This should manage your pain while we prepare for surgery. They pressed the device against Marcus's neck. There was the familiar hiss of injection. Marcus's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion. Surprise. Mild discomfort. Then his skin flushed bright red. Doc? I feel weird. Weird how? Like my skin is trying to escape my body. Weird. HFY's scanner shrieked. Allergic reaction. Severe histamine response. They grabbed a different hypospray, loaded it with an antihistamine, and administered it immediately. The redness began to fade. Okay, HFY said, making notes with one hand while the other three recalibrated equipment. Apparently humans are allergic to varidaxin. This is new information that contradicts several medical databases. Are you sure you guys know how to treat humans? Marcus asked, scratching at his neck. I have treated humans before. None of them had this reaction. Maybe I am just special. That is not the word I would use. HFY loaded a different medication. This is a Krolorian pain suppressant. Much stronger. Usually reserved for species with redundant nervous systems, but given your apparent immunity to death, perhaps it will work. Second injection. Marcus blinked. Then blinked again. How do you feel? HFY asked. Exactly the same as before. That is impossible. This medication could render a Krolorian warrior unconscious. Well, I am very conscious. Still at about a 7.5 on the pain scale. Maybe a 7.7 now. Is it getting worse? That might be the internal bleeding. By this point, several other medical staff members had begun to gather. Word had spread through the Mercy's Reach that something interesting was happening in Emergency Bay 3, and interesting in a medical facility usually meant educational or horrifying or both. Dr. Zentik, a Zephyrite surgeon, floated closer. Their gaseous form shimmered with curiosity. Is it true you have a human who refuses to die properly? I am not refusing, Marcus called out. I am just not getting around to it yet. Busy schedule. HFY ignored the growing audience and tried a third medication. This one was technically classified as dangerous for most species, with a warning label that took up more space than the usage instructions. They were now in the realm of experimental desperation. Third injection. Marcus tilted his head. Okay, that one did something. I am at like a 6.8 now. Maybe a 6.9. You are rating your pain with decimal points. I am very precise about my suffering. The medication I just gave you is derived from a neurotoxin. Is that bad? For most species, yes. It is very bad. It is explicitly bad. Well, for me it is apparently pretty okay. Marcus shifted on the table, then reconsidered. Actually, do not move is the lesson I keep learning and then immediately forgetting. 7.2. We are going backwards, Doc. Nurse Kivri consulted her own scanner. Doctor, his adrenaline levels are significantly elevated. Perhaps that is interfering with the medication efficacy? Adrenaline does not work that way. It does not usually work that way, she corrected gently. HFY pulled up human endocrine system data. The adrenaline readings were indeed elevated, had been since Marcus arrived, and showed no signs of decreasing. In most species, this level of adrenaline would cause cardiac arrest. In Marcus, it seemed to be functioning as a very aggressive cup of coffee. Mr. Webb, are you aware that your body is currently flooded with enough adrenaline to kill a Pelion? Marcus glanced at Kivri. No offense. Much offense taken, actually, she chimed. My body does that sometimes when I am injured, Marcus explained. Fight or flight response. Except I cannot really fight or flee right now, so it is just kind of fight or fight. My body is very confused but very enthusiastic. Dr. Zentik drifted closer to HFY. I have never seen anything like this. His biology is actively working against standard treatment. Thank you for that assessment. I could observe the surgery if you would like. For educational purposes. This is not a teaching moment. This is a crisis. It can be both. HFY loaded a fourth medication, this one an experimental hybrid they had been saving for truly desperate situations. They were now firmly in truly desperate territory. What is your pain level now? They asked Marcus before administering anything. 7.4. It is kind of fluctuating. Very dynamic pain. Keeps me on my toes. Well, not literally, because standing seems like a bad idea. If this does not work, I am going to have to just proceed with surgery and hope your body's apparent refusal to follow biological rules extends to anesthesia. That is the spirit, Doc. Embrace the chaos. HFY Sci-Fi administered the fourth injection and waited. Marcus's expression shifted. Oh, that is working. I am at like a 4 now. Maybe a 3.8. Finally, HFY Sci-Fi breathed. Yeah, this is nice. I feel floaty. Is floaty normal? For this medication, yes. Cool. Hey, is the room spinning or is that just me? That is also normal. Awesome. Marcus's eyes were slightly unfocused now. You know, Doc, you are doing a great job. Real solid work. 4 arms. That is like, twice as many arms as me. Efficient. HFY Sci-Fi felt something they had not experienced in years, relief. Nurse Kivri, prep the surgical suite. We finally have a treatment protocol that works. Only took 4 tries, Marcus said happily. That is not bad. I once had a dentist who needed 6 tries to numb my mouth. Humans are weird, Doc. We are real weird. For once, HFY Sci-Fi could not disagree, while the surgical suite was being prepared, and while Marcus was enjoying his chemically induced floatiness at a comfortable 3.6 on his very specific pain scale, HFY Sci-Fi found themselves confronting an existential crisis they had not anticipated when they woke up that morning. I do not understand, they said, more to themselves than to Marcus, but the human responded anyway because apparently near-fatal injuries did not dampen his conversational enthusiasm. What do not you understand, Doc? I am happy to explain. I am very smart right now. This medication makes me feel smart. Am I smart? You are tolerable, HFY Sci-Fi said. What I do not understand is how your species survived long enough to develop space travel. By all accounts, you should have gone extinct approximately 10 minutes after achieving sentience. Ah, but that is the thing. Marcus held up one finger, swaying slightly. We are really, really hard to kill. Like, annoyingly hard to kill. We are built for surviving, Doc. It is kind of our whole deal. That is not how evolution works. It is exactly how evolution works on Earth. Marcus's eyes were glazed but his voice carried a strange sort of pride. See, Earth is what we call a death world. Everything there is trying to kill you. The animals, the weather, the plants, the invisible tiny organisms, sometimes the ground just opens up and swallows you. Real hostile place. HFY Sci-Fi's homeworld of Vrexia was a paradise of mild temperatures, abundant resources, and exactly 0 predators. The most dangerous creature on Vrexia was a small herbivore that occasionally startled people by existing too loudly. They tried to imagine a planet where the ground itself was an enemy and failed completely. So humans evolved through constant mortal danger. Exactly. Persistence hunting, that was our thing. We would just chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. Could not outrun us because we sweat, which is gross but effective. Could not outlast us because we are stubborn. We are like the universe's most annoying predator. We just keep coming. This explains so much and yet answers nothing. We have got redundancies for our redundancies, Doc. 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, we can lose like a third of our liver and it will just grow back. Our bones break and heal stronger. We adapted to survive because everything on Earth wanted us dead, and we looked at death and said nah, not today. Dr. Zentik floated closer, their gaseous form pulsing with interest. My species evolved in the peaceful thermal vents of Zephyros. No predators. No competition. Just warm currents and abundant energy. We are efficient, but fragile. Exactly, HFY Sci-Fi said, gesturing with all 4 arms at once. The Vrexians, the Zephyrites, the Pelians, we all evolved for efficiency. Our biology is elegant. Streamlined. Humans are built like they were designed by a committee of disasters who could not agree on anything except that more pain tolerance was probably good. That is beautiful, Doc, Marcus said, his eyes getting misty. That is poetry. We are a committee of disasters. I am going to get that tattooed. What is tattooed? We stab ink into our skin permanently for decoration. Why would you do that? Because we can. Because it hurts and we do not care. Because humans see pain as like a challenge to overcome rather than a warning to stop. HFY sat down on a nearby stool, something they rarely did during work hours. You are telling me that humans intentionally cause themselves pain for aesthetic purposes? Oh yeah, all the time. Tattoos, piercings, we also do this thing called spicy food where we eat chemicals that make our mouths burn and we enjoy it. We drink poison for fun, Doc. Alcohol is literally a toxin and we have entire social rituals around consuming it. I need to sit down. You are sitting down. I need to sit down more. Nurse Kivri's glow had shifted to a confused purple. By Pelian standards, humans should not exist. You are a biological impossibility. We are the universe's cockroaches, Marcus said cheerfully. Hard to kill, harder to get rid of, probably going to survive the heat death of the universe out of pure spite. When the last star burns out, there will be a human somewhere going, well, this is inconvenient, but I have had worse Tuesdays. HFY looked at this human, this impossible, frustrating, catastrophically injured human who was joking about cosmic extinction, and felt their entire understanding of medicine shift. The Vrexians had evolved for peace. The Zephyrites for efficiency. The Pelians for beauty. Humans had evolved for one thing and one thing only, refusing to die. The surgical suite is ready, Kivri announced softly. Good, HFY said, standing. Let us see if human stubbornness extends to surviving surgery designed for species that actually make biological sense. That is the spirit, Doc, Marcus said, giving a thumbs up that immediately made him wince. Embrace the chaos. We are all just disasters waiting to happen. Some of us are just better at happening repeatedly. The surgery took 4 hours. HFY repaired the lung, stabilized the internal bleeding, set the ribs with synthetic bonding gel, and treated the spleen with regenerative nanoscaffolding. It was textbook work, perfect execution, and they expected Marcus to be unconscious in recovery for at least 48 hours. He woke up in 6. Morning, Doc, Marcus said, his voice rough but functional. Or is it evening? I have lost track of time. What day is it? HFY looked up from their medical notes, all 4 eyes widening in synchronized disbelief. You should not be conscious. Yeah, you keep saying that. Starting to think it is your catchphrase. Mr. Webb, I performed major surgery on you 6 hours ago. Most species require 2 full planetary rotations to regain consciousness from the anesthesia alone. Well, I have always been an early riser. Marcus tried to sit up, thought better of it, and settled for turning his head. How did it go? Am I going to live? Unfortunately for my understanding of biology, yes. Over the next 48 hours, HFY documented everything with the meticulous care of someone who knew they were witnessing medical history, even if that history was profoundly annoying. Marcus's cellular regeneration was operating at roughly 3 times the expected rate for a standard human baseline. The fractures were already showing bone calcification. The lung tissue was knitting itself back together with what could only be described as aggressive enthusiasm. This is impossible, HFY muttered, taking their 14th scan of the day. You really need a new word, Marcus said. Then the rest of Marcus's crew arrived. Engineer First Class Rachel Torres came in with a compound fracture of the femur, walking on it, asking if someone could just splint it real quick because she had maintenance checks to run. Navigator Chen Park had a concussion severe enough that his brain was technically swelling against his skull, and he spent the entire examination trying to reschedule their flight departure. Cargo specialist James Okonkwo had Second-degree burns across 30% of his body from a plasma conduit explosion and was primarily concerned about whether the burns would affect his vacation tan. Is this normal for humans? Dr. Zentik asked, hovering between patients with visible confusion. Unfortunately, yes, HFY said, watching Rachel argue with Nurse Kivri about whether crutches were really necessary. I am beginning to think catastrophic injury is a human bonding activity. It kind of is, Marcus called from his bed. Hey, Torres, remember that time on Chrono 7 when the cargo door fell on you? Broke 4 ribs and a collarbone, Rachel called back cheerfully. Still finished the loading sequence though. That is the human spirit right there, Marcus said proudly. Chen Park waved from his exam table. I once navigated through an asteroid field while having a stroke. Turned out to be a migraine, but still, very impressive piloting under pressure. You had a stroke and continued working? HFY's voice had gone flat with the exhaustion of someone whose reality had been thoroughly demolished. Migraine. Different thing. Less serious. Still very painful. 7.8 out of 10. You people have a rating system for pain? You do not? James looked genuinely surprised. How do you communicate your suffering? We do not suffer regularly enough to need a standardized scale. The 4 humans exchanged glances, then laughed. It was the sound of people who had collectively looked death in the eye so many times they were on first-name basis with it. HFY returned to their office and began compiling their notes. The paper would be titled Humans, a Study in Biological Noncompliance, Observed Resilience in Catastrophic Injury Cases. It would be 17 pages long. It would be rejected by 3 medical journals for being too unbelievable before finally being published in the Quarterly Review of Xenobiological Anomalies. The conclusion would read, human durability is not a flaw in our understanding of biology. It is a feature of a species that evolved on a planet that apparently hated them personally. Recommend updating all human medical protocols from standard fragile species treatment to disaster-resistant organism management. Further recommend that medical professionals treating humans simply expect the impossible and plan accordingly. Also recommend keeping significant quantities of coffee on hand. They will ask for it. Repeatedly. HFY looked through the window at their 4 human patients, all of whom were healing at rates that defied medical science, all of whom were joking and laughing like they had not collectively experienced enough trauma to kill a small army. Humans were not fragile, humans were the medical anomaly of the galaxy. And HFY was developing something that felt suspiciously like respect, mixed liberally with bewilderment and a touch of existential dread. Doctor? Kivri chimed softly. Marcus is asking for coffee again. Of course he is, HFY said. Of course he is. 3 days after arriving more dead than alive, Marcus Webb stood in the discharge area of Emergency Bay 3, fully dressed, in release forms with steady hands, and looking approximately 70% healthier than any patient had a right to be after major thoracic surgery. HFY performed one final scan, watching the readouts with the resigned acceptance of someone whose concept of medical reality had been thoroughly and permanently altered. Lung function at 87%. Ribs show advanced healing with proper alignment. Internal organ function within normal human parameters, which I have learned is a phrase that means almost nothing because human parameters are apparently optional suggestions rather than biological requirements. So I am good to go? Marcus asked hopefully. You are adequate to go. I would not classify anything about your biology as good. Functional, perhaps. Stubbornly operational. I will take it. Marcus extended his hand, a human gesture HFY had learned meant respectful greeting or farewell. They gripped it carefully with their primary right hand, still surprised by how warm human skin was, how fragile it felt despite everything they had witnessed. Thank you, Doc. Seriously. You put me back together when I was pretty thoroughly taken apart. That is quality work. It was adequate work on an inadequate patient who refused to stay adequately injured. Marcus laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Hey, when my crew and I get back to Earth, first round is on me. You ever make it to Sol System, look me up. I owe you a drink. I appreciate the offer, but alcohol is toxic to Vrexians. Even small amounts would cause severe neurological damage and possible death. Marcus paused, his expression cycling through realization and then amusement. Right. Forgot. It is poison. We drink it for fun. That sentence summarizes everything I have learned about humans in the past 72 hours. We are a special kind of crazy, aren't we? Special is one word for it. XYLDR tilted their head, a gesture of acknowledgement. You are terrifyingly resilient, Mr. Webb. Your entire species is. I have treated patients from 147 different species over my career, and humans are the only ones who have made me question whether I actually understand medicine. That is probably the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. It was not intended as a compliment. I am taking it as one anyway. Marcus picked up his small bag of personal belongings, wincing only slightly at the movement. Take care of yourself, Doc. And maybe keep some of that weird neurotoxin painkiller around. Seems like more humans are getting into space every year, and we have got a real talent for finding new and exciting ways to injure ourselves. I am already updating our protocols. Yeah? What are you changing? XYLDR pulled up their medical database on a nearby display and navigated to the human species classification. With deliberate precision, they modified the entry. Where it had once read species classification, fragile, standard precautions, it now read species classification, concerningly indestructible, expect biological non-compliance, keep coffee available. That seems fair, Marcus said, grinning. They walked together toward the exit, XYLDR accompanying their patient for the final few meters out of professional courtesy and a strange sense that they should ensure Marcus actually made it off the ship without discovering some new way to injure himself. Marcus stepped through the doorway, turned to wave goodbye, and immediately tripped over the raised threshold. XYLDR's forearms shot forward in alarm, medical training overriding everything else. Already calculating fall trajectory and potential injury locations, Marcus caught himself on the doorframe, stumbled, regained his balance, and laughed. I am good. I am good. Just forgot to pick up my feet. Classic me. You nearly gave me a cardiac incident. Sorry, Doc. In my defense, I have been horizontal for 3 days. Walking is harder than I remembered. He straightened up, tested his balance, and gave a thumbs up. See? Fine. Totally fine. The ribs did not even hurt that much. Please leave before you discover a new way to require surgery. Fair enough. Thanks again, Doc. XYLDR watched Marcus Webb walk down the corridor toward the docking bays, his gait only slightly uneven, his posture remarkably good for someone who had recently had their chest cavity reorganized. The human disappeared around a corner, and XYLDR stood there for a long moment, processing the past 3 days. Nurse Kivri drifted up beside them, her glow a thoughtful amber. That was educational. That was traumatic. Will you actually update the human protocols? XYLDR looked at the display still showing their modified classification. Concerningly indestructible. It felt accurate in a way that textbook medical definitions rarely achieved. Yes, they said. And I am adding a note that human pain scales are largely decorative and should not be trusted. Also that their concept of fine ranges from actually fine to approximately 15 minutes from death with no reliable way to distinguish between the two. Should we add anything about the coffee? The coffee note stays. That one I am confident about. They returned to their office, settled into their chair, and pulled up the medical journal submission they had been working on. The paper had grown to 23 pages now, including a section titled Why Human Biology Appears to be Held Together with Optimism and Spite, a medical analysis. Outside the window, the Mercy's Reach continued its eternal orbit, a hospital ship serving hundreds of species across dozens of star systems. XYLDR had treated them all. Had learned their biology, their quirks, their medical needs, but humans, they were beginning to understand, were something different entirely, not fragile. Not delicate. Not easily broken, concerningly indestructible, and absolutely, categorically, fundamentally terrifying in their refusal to simply die when biology suggested they should. HFY saved their protocol updates, filed their medical report, and made a note to order 17 additional units of that neurotoxin-based painkiller. If humans were getting into space in greater numbers, medical facilities across the galaxy were going to need it, and significantly more coffee, possibly therapy for the medical staff, definitely therapy. HFY looked at the empty exam bed where Marcus had spent 3 days defying medical science and sighed with all 4 lungs. Humans, they said to the empty room. The universe's cockroaches. Hard to kill. Harder to understand. Impossible to prepare for. The medical scanner beeped softly in agreement. Or maybe it was just recalibrating. With humans, it was genuinely hard to tell.